Please join me in welcoming a man who is taught about the Constitution, who is standing with citizens across this land, showing how we can exercise our civic authority, and who is fighting for freedom, standing with us today, Glenn Beck.
Yeah! Woo! All right. Woo! Glenn Beck.
Hello. I want to bring on some of my friends. Some people that are warriors, because our tactics have got to change. If we want our country to change, we have to change fundamentally as people. Today, inside, they dedicated a brand new statue to another American giant. This one was Frederick Douglass. He was a man that was born into slavery, but knew instinctively that he was not a slave. To keep a man a slave, you have to do the same, much of the same, as the old circus masters used to do around the turn of the last century with elephants. You'd clamp heavy chains around their legs, and then you would stake it to the ground. Then you would take the elephant and you would beat it, and you would terrorize it. And after a while, you could unstake the chain. The elephant would just give up. He would no longer move. Just the mere rattle of the chain was enough to scare the elephant. And so they would give up, and they would do whatever it was the circus master required. Frederick Douglass was lucky enough to grow up in a house where he was taught to read and to write and to think. He knew that God did not make men to be masters over other men.
Amen.
He knew that God did not intend any man to impose unrighteous dominion over any man or beast. It is time that Americans remind themselves of this truth again and rise up against the intimidation before the handful of peanuts from our new political circus masters are considered kindness instead of the symbol of evil cruelty which they are.
Amen.
In the building that stands behind me and in front of you, right now they are excusing the storing of all data, all phone calls, all financial transactions, geo-tracking. They are doing it in the name of our safety while allowing anyone to cross our borders either on foot or in underground tunnels without any worry or consequence. In the building behind me, they have not suspended or fired, but have promoted those at the IRS who rattled the chains of control to any group that disagreed with its policies. And now they are pushing misery and death through the so-called Arab Spring, country after country, and now they are plotting a new war with Syria. This again will bring nothing but death and destruction the world over, and the price that we will pay will be too high. We are told that we have to pick sides to arm those, but those people that we are choosing to arm are so far down on the scale of decency that even Vladimir Putin this week asked if Americans knew that the people we were arming were actually eating their enemies on the battlefield. The fact that Putin had to even ask that question, and the fact that most Americans didn't even know or had seen the video of that commander that we are arming, now engaging in those things, is an indictment not only of our Congress, our president, but our media and, quite honestly, ourselves. I called some friends to stand with me today, some modern-day spiritual giants. They are from different faiths, they are from different backgrounds, they have some different views, I'm sure, but we all have one thing in common. We don't recognize our country anymore, and because we know that God is just, we tremble for the future of our children. But we wonder, and we want to ask all Americans, is this country even worth defending anymore?
USA! 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 USA!
It is easy to shout USA. It is harder to defend the principles that we don't even know.
Amen.
What is it we stand for? Who are we? And will most of our citizens even care or notice as the chain is clamped around her leg again? What is it that will be written about this generation? What is it that will be said about us? The greatest generation has almost completely passed. It is us now that historians will watch to see what we will do. Will it be said of us, this generation, that no one called for justice, no one pleaded for truth, that we trusted in vanity and spoke in lies, that we conceived mischief and brought forth iniquity? What is it that we even believe anymore? And where did we get these ideas that now seem to be so popular with our fellow citizens? Our forebears came to these shores not for free stuff, but for freedom.
Amen.
Our forebears came here to make their own way, to create a different life. They came here because they knew that God made them free, and they were free to pursue their own happiness and take responsibility for their own lives and their own actions. They came here because even though they may have come from different religions, they knew they had the right to worship the God of their understanding the way they chose to worship.
Amen.
There are some things that are still worth believing in, but how many Americans do anymore? How many of us still really believe that the little guy can make it, that every single life has value and is worth living, that honor and integrity do matter, that justice will prevail, if not in this lifetime, surely in the next? America must recognize that God does exist, and that what each of us do and choose to do with every second of our day matters. America must again recognize that it is the meek that shall inherit the earth. Have we forgotten, as we declare ourselves masters of the planet in our arrogance, spread our troops all over the planet, teach the world how to do banking the way we do it in America, even though we can't master our own homes, protect our own neighborhoods, or seemingly balance a simple checkbook ourselves? How grotesque and garish we must appear to those who are looking in. I, for one, still believe in the simple, silly notion of truth, justice, and the American way. But we have to admit to ourselves that since our very founding, a good percentage of our fellow citizens closed their eyes to the civil rights violations of other Americans.
That's right.
There was only about 10 to 20% of those who fought in the American Revolution. Only about 10 or 20% of the entire population of America was involved. The rest stood out and watched to see what would happen. People, all our history, have said things like, well, I'm okay. Well, I just don't want to think about that. That's kind of a bad thing. Or I'm busy. Or it doesn't personally affect me. Or it can't be as bad as they say. Or even if it is, I'm just one person. And what difference can I make? Nothing has changed except the chairs at the table. Someone is always on the losing end of the stick of power. Blacks are the most obvious, the Chinese, the Native American, but let's not forget the Irish, or the Catholics, or the Mormons, or the Jews. And now it seems those on the short end of the stick are all those of faith that will not conform.
Amen.
For those that think men foolishly make progress collectively, let me warn you, history teaches you couldn't be more wrong. We are redeemed one man at a time. There is no family pass ticket or park hopping pass to life. It is one ticket, one ride, one person at a time. Man does not vanquish hatred or bigotry. Hatred and bigotry continues to move, from the blacks to the Irish to the atheists to the Christians. But if you recognize this, you will notice also that there are always a few leaders that stand up. Ben Franklin, John Quincy Adams, Harriet Beecher Stowe, Abraham Lincoln, Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington, Gandhi, Martin Luther King. They knew that the march toward freedom never ends, and man must be vigilant and pray less with his lips and more with his legs.
Amen. Amen.
Those few people inspired just handfuls of people. They never forgot that truth, justice, and freedom are the well springs of the water of man's civil rights, and so they must be upheld for all men. Those that you don't know, those that you don't like, most importantly, those that you do know and really don't like.
Amen.
Because if their
Amen.
rights are violated, all rights are violated. In the past, these historic stands in America, which we now call civil rights movements, were all done by a small but dedicated portion of citizens, which led to great and profound changes in our nation. But those movements always started in the same place, the church, and with people of God. And usually not the popular churches. Usually not the preachers that everybody loved to hear. They were the preachers that put it all on the line. They were the preachers like these men who knew they were born free, but that freedom comes at a profound price, profound responsibility. People that stood against injustice, hatred, and bigotry. Our pulpits in this country have gone silent out of fear, out of arrogance, or out of apathy. Their faith is now found in the wisdom of man and not the power of God. For some preachers losing their tithing checks, or maybe it's the gold Rolex, has become more important than losing man's freedom. Whatever the reason, they are no longer willing to call evil by its name. And there is no vision. And when there is no vision, the people shall perish. May I humbly suggest a vision. Martin Luther King knew the answer, and he lost a lot more than congregants on his march. Students today all across our country are taught that his vision probably came from Gandhi, or maybe that idea came from some progressive philosopher in the early 20th century. Martin Luther King's vision of although we all be free men, when we choose to make ourselves servant to all, we gain the more, did not come from a progressive philosopher. Believe me. Let's get a couple of things straight. What MLK and Gandhi and Lincoln, what they all did was not progressive or new. It was ancient. Hollywood, Woodstock, and the hippie culture was not the source of the power of the 1960s civil rights movement. It was God and God alone. It was God that led those men and women risking their lives over that bridge in Selma, Alabama. Not Janis Joplin, not Columbia University, and it sure the hell wasn't a labor union. It wasn't John Lennon that taught people about peace and peaceful resistance. That job fell on the shoulders of a Jewish carpenter a long time ago.
Amen.
The rights that so many Americans ignorantly preach about, whine about, aren't even theirs. They don't belong to us. Those rights belong to God. We are mere caretakers of those rights. They belong to Him,